Champagne flutes shattered against the marble floor, silencing the entire ballroom, but the sound was nothing compared to the words that followed. Bridger thought he was the king of the world that night. He had the promotion, the money, and the stunning mistress on his arm. He looked at his wife soaked from the rain, standing in her worn coat, and laughed. He told her she was nothing. He told her she was a stain on his success. He didn't know that the useless old man she called her father was actually sitting in the royal box above them, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy him. This is the story of how a man lost everything in a single heartbeat, not because he failed, but because he forgot who really held the crown. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Cipher Club, an exclusive venue perched high above the glittering grid of Manhattan. Inside, the atmosphere was hermetically sealed in gold light and the scent of expensive lilies. This was the night Bridger Calloway had been waiting for. At 34, he was the youngest senior partner at Kensington and Wyatt, a private equity firm that chewed up weak men and spat them out. Bridger, however, had never been chewed up. He was the shark. He stood near the center of the room, one hand casually tucked into the pocket of his bespoke charcoal suit, the other swirling a glass of 1959 Dom Perignon. "To the man of the hour," Sasha murmured, leaning into him. Sasha Montgomery was everything Bridger believed he deserved. She was 25, a marketing director at a rival firm, and sharp as a tack. Tonight, she wore a backless crimson gown that clung to her silhouette like liquid fire. She was the trophy he wanted the world to see. "It's only the beginning, Sasha," Bridger replied, his voice smooth, lacking any hint of humility. "Once the merger with the European conglomerate goes through next week, I won't just be a partner. I'll be on the global board. I'll be untouchable." Sasha traced the rim of her glass, her eyes scanning the room. "And what about the anchor?" Bridger's jaw tightened. "Don't call her that. It gives her too much weight. She's not an anchor. She's barely a paperweight." He was talking about Gracelyn Calloway, his wife of 4 years. When they met, Bridger was an ambitious junior analyst, and Gracelyn was a quiet, unassuming graphic designer who loved gardening and old books. She had been safe, supportive. She cooked his meals, ironed his shirts, and listened to his rants about office politics. But as Bridger's stock rose, Gracelyn's quiet demeanor began to feel like a liability. She didn't like parties. She didn't wear diamonds. She didn't shine. "She's coming tonight, isn't she?" Sasha asked, a cruel smirk playing on her lips. "You said you had to invite her for appearances." "She's late," Bridger scoffed, checking his watch, a heavy platinum piece he'd bought with his last bonus. "Probably couldn't figure out how to hail a cab in the rain. She's helpless without me." As if summoned by his arrogance, the heavy oak doors of the ballroom creaked open. The room was filled with New York's elite women in Vera Wang and men in Tom Ford. And then there was Gracelyn. She stepped into the foyer, dripping wet. Her umbrella must have broken, for her honey blonde hair was plastered to her forehead. She wasn't wearing a gown. She was wearing a sensible, knee-length navy dress that she'd worn to 3 other events this year, covered by a beige trench coat that looked thoroughly soaked. She looked small, out of place, like a sparrow that had accidentally flown into a falcon's nest. A few heads turned, whispers rippled through the crowd. "Is that Calloway's wife? She looks like she just came from a library. God, look at him with a girl in red. The contrast is brutal." Bridger felt a flush of heat crawl up his neck. It wasn't love or concern. It was pure, unadulterated embarrassment. He handed his champagne glass to a passing waiter and marched toward the door, Sasha trailing a few steps behind him like a predator sensing a wounded animal. Bridger intercepted Gracelyn before she could fully enter the main hall. He gripped her upper arm, his fingers digging into the damp fabric of her coat. "What do you think you're doing?" he hissed, his voice low but venomous. Gracelyn looked up at him, her blue eyes calm, though shadowed with fatigue. "Hello, Bridger. The taxi broke down 3 blocks away. I had to walk. I didn't want to miss your speech." "Look at you," Bridger sneered, gesturing up and down her body. You're soaking wet. You look like a drowned rat, Gracelyn. I have the CEO of Kensington and Wyatt here. I have investors from Zurich. And you walk in looking like this. I can go to the ladies' room and dry off, Gracelyn said softly. I just wanted to be here for you. For me. Bridger laughed, a harsh barking sound. If you were for me, you'd know how to dress. You'd know how to act. You'd know how to dress. You'd know how to act. You'd be more like... He paused, gesturing behind him. Sasha stepped forward, radiating perfection. She looked at Gracelyn with mock pity. Oh, you poor thing. Do you want my coat check ticket? Maybe they have a spare towel in the kitchen. Gracelyn's gaze shifted to Sasha. There was no anger in her eyes, only a deep, unsettling disappointment. Hello, Sasha. I see you're wearing the earrings Bridger bought last month. The ones on the company credit card statement listed as client gifts. Sasha's smile faltered for a second, but Bridger stepped between them, shielding his mistress. Don't you dare, Bridger snapped. Don't you dare stand there in your cheap department store dress and judge me. I built this life, Gracelyn. I pay for the apartment, the food, the charity donations you love so much. I carry you. And tonight of all nights, you embarrass me. I embarrass you, Gracelyn asked, her voice steady. By existing? Or by not being shiny enough to distract them from your lack of integrity? Bridger's face went purple. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of alcohol and aggression. Go home, Gracelyn. Get out. I don't want you here. In fact, when I come home tonight, I don't want you in the master bedroom either. Sleep in the guest room. It's where you belong. You're a guest in my life, and I'm tired of hosting you. The music in the ballroom seemed to swell, drowning out the ambient noise, but the silence between them was deafening. Gracelyn looked at him for a long moment. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply adjusted her wet coat. Are you sure, Bridger? She asked. This is a big night. There are people here you haven't met yet. People watching. I know everyone worth knowing in this room, Bridger declared, puffing out his chest. And you are nobody. Now leave. Gracelyn nodded slowly. Very well. Enjoy your speech, Bridger. She turned and walked back out into the rain. Bridger exhaled, smoothing his lapels. He turned to Sasha, forcing a smile. Sorry about that. Taking out the trash is always messy. Sasha laughed, linking her arm through his. You're so strong, Ben. Most men wouldn't have the guts. They walked back into the party, greeting the CEO, laughing with the investors. Bridger felt invincible. He had no idea that the nobody he had just kicked out had pulled out a phone the moment she stepped onto the sidewalk. She dialed a number with a country code that belonged to a small, wealthy principality in Europe. Papa? Gracelyn said into the phone, the rain mixing with the tears she finally let fall. You were right. He's not the one. You can proceed with the acquisition. 3 days after the gala at the Cypher Club, the atmosphere in the Calloway penthouse was toxic. Bridger had barely spoken to Gracelyn since the party. He had spent the last 2 nights working late, a euphemism that fooled no one. Certainly not Gracelyn. She knew he was at the Four Seasons with Sasha. On Wednesday evening, Bridger came home early. This was unusual. Usually he waited until he was sure Gracelyn was asleep to avoid confrontation. Gracelyn was sitting in the living room, reading a leather-bound book. The room was expansive, decorated in cold greys and blacks that Bridger favored. It felt more like a hotel lobby than a home. Bridger walked in, carrying a leather briefcase. He didn't say hello. He walked straight to the coffee table and slammed a thick manila envelope onto the polished mahogany. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Gracelyn closed her book gently. Hello, Bridger. How was work? Cut the act, Grace, Bridger said, loosening his tie and throwing it onto the sofa. We're done. I can't do this anymore. I can't drag dead weight up the mountain with me. Gracelyn looked at the envelope. Divorce papers? Prepared by the best lawyers in the city, Bridger said, walking over to the wet bar to pour himself a scotch. I'm being generous. You get a lump sum, enough to rent a nice little apartment in Queens or Wherever people like you live, maybe you can go back to that tiny village in France where I found you. Gracelyn had met Bridger while she was studying art in Europe. He had been backpacking before business school, and she had been living a quiet life in the countryside of Valoria. He assumed she was a farmer's daughter. She had never corrected him. "You want me to leave the apartment?" Gracelyn asked. "It's my apartment," Bridger corrected. "My name is on the deed. My salary pays the mortgage. You have 48 hours to pack your things. Sasha is moving in on Friday." Gracelyn raised an eyebrow. "Friday?" Gracelyn raised an eyebrow. "That's fast. Does she know about the plumbing issues in the master bath, or that the board has to approve all new tenants?" "Sasha is a professional," Bridger snapped. "She fits in this world. The board will love her. Unlike you, she knows how to network. She doesn't sit in corners reading books about... What is that? Medieval botany?" He snatched the book from her hands and tossed it aside. "You're boring, Gracelyn. You're plain. And frankly, you're holding me back. The global merger is happening this weekend. The royal delegation from Valoria is arriving to sign the deal with Kensington and Wyatt. I need a wife who can charm a Grand Duke, not one who looks like she milks cows." Gracelyn stood up. For the first time, her posture changed. She didn't hunch. She didn't look down. She stood at her full height, her chin lifted. "You're meeting the delegation from Valoria?" she asked, her voice possessing a strange, cool resonance. "Yes," Bridger bragged. "I'm leading the negotiations. It's the deal of the century. They're a small nation, but they sit on billions in heritage funds, and I'm going to be the one to manage it. Imagine that, Grace. Me, managing a kingdom's wealth. And what if they don't like you?" Gracelyn asked. Bridger laughed. "Why wouldn't they? I'm charming, successful, and American. They need us. Their head of state, what's his name? Duke Henry? He's just some old figurehead, probably barely speaks English. I'll run circles around him." Gracelyn walked over to the table and picked up the envelope. She didn't open it. She just held it. "You called my father a nobody farmer once," Gracelyn said quietly, "because he is." Bridger exclaimed, exasperated. "I met the man, Grace. He was wearing muddy boots and pruning roses when I came to pick you up that summer. He barely looked at me. He was pruning roses because he enjoys it, Bridger, not because he has to. Whatever. Just sign the papers." Bridger downed his drink. "I want this clean. No fighting. If you contest it, I'll make sure you get nothing. I have friends in every court in this city." Gracelyn looked at him. Really looked at him, as if she were memorizing a tragedy. "I won't fight you, Bridger," she said. Bridger blinked, surprised by her surrender. "Oh. Well, good. That's smart of you. I'll sign," she continued. "And I'll be gone by tomorrow morning, but I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that I gave you every chance to be kind. I gave you every chance to be a husband. Save the drama." Bridger waved his hand. "Just sign." Gracelyn pulled a pen from her pocket, a silver fountain pen with a crest engraved on the cap. Bridger had never noticed the crest before. She signed the papers with a flourish, her signature elegant and sharp. "Done," she said, dropping the pen on the papers. "I'll pack my clothes. You can keep the furniture. You can keep the apartment. You can keep Sasha. You can keep the apartment. You can keep Sasha." She walked toward the bedroom, then paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Bridger?" "What?" he grunted, already reaching for his phone to text Sasha the good news. "Good luck with the Valorian delegation on Saturday. I hear the Grand Duke is very protective of his family." Bridger rolled his eyes. "I think I can handle a senile old man. Goodbye, Gracelyn." He didn't watch her leave. If he had, he might have noticed that she didn't pack her clothes into cardboard boxes. He might have noticed a black limousine idling downstairs, the driver waiting with an umbrella. He might have noticed that the driver bowed when Gracelyn exited the building. But Bridger Calloway was too busy celebrating his freedom. He poured another drink, looked out at the city lights, and toasted himself. "To the top," he whispered. He had no idea that he was standing on a trapdoor, and the lever had just been pulled. Saturday arrived, with a sky the color of bruised iron. The air in Manhattan was thick, charged with the electricity of an impending storm, mirroring the atmosphere inside the gilded halls of the Vanderbilt Plaza Hotel, where the global merger gala was to be held. Bridger stood in front of the full-length mirror in the hotel's presidential suite room the firm had booked for him to impress the delegates. He adjusted his silk tie, a deep crimson that matched the blood rush of adrenaline in his veins. He wore a custom Brioni suit, costing more than his father's car. And on his wrist sat the Patek Philippe he had bought to celebrate the divorce. "You look like a king," Sasha purred from the bed. She was surrounded by a sea of tissue paper and designer shopping bags. Bridger turned to her. Sasha was beautiful, undeniably. But today, her beauty felt sharp, predatory. She had chosen a dress of sheer gold mesh that left little to the imagination. It was stunning for a nightclub in Miami, perhaps. But for a diplomatic trade summit with conservative European royals, it skirted the edge of vulgarity. "Are you sure about the dress?" Bridger asked, frowning slightly. "The Valorian delegation is old-fashioned." Sasha rolled her eyes, standing up and smoothing the fabric over her hips. "Bridger, stop worrying. They're European, not nuns. Besides, I'm the future Mrs. Calloway. I need to make a statement. Graceland would have worn a sack. Do you want a sack?" "No," Bridger said quickly. "You're right, you look perfect." He checked his phone. No messages from Graceland. Not that he expected any. Her lawyer had sent over the countersigned divorce papers yesterday morning. It was done. She was gone. He was gone. He was free. "Let's go," Bridger said. "The CEO, Arthur Pendleton, is already downstairs. I need to brief him on how to handle the Duke." Dot. The grand ballroom of the Vanderbilt was transformed. Security was tighter than a G7 summit. Men with earpieces and grim expressions lined the perimeter. The guest list was a catalogue of the Fortune 500. As Bridger and Sasha entered, flashbulbs popped. Bridger waved, flashing his practiced winning smile. Sasha clung to his arm, basking in the attention, posing for cameras that were mostly interested in the man she was with. Arthur Pendleton, the CEO of Kensington and Wyatt, intercepted them near the ice sculpture. Arthur was a heavy-set man with a face like a bulldog and a temperament to match. "Calloway," Arthur grunted, eyeing Sasha's dress with a flicker of disapproval before dismissing it. "You're late. The Valorian advance team is already here. They're stone-faced. I tried to crack a joke about the weather, and they looked at me like I'd insulted their ancestors." "Don't worry, Arthur," Bridger said smoothly, picking up a glass of scotch. "I have a rapport with the family. I spent a summer in Valoria years ago. I know the culture." "You better," Arthur warned. "This deal is worth $40 billion. If we secure the management rights to the Valorian Sovereign Fund, our stock triples overnight. If we blow it, we're done. The board is watching. We won't blow it," Bridger assured him. Just then, the music stopped. A hush fell over the room. The heavy double doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open. A herald, actually a herald with a staff, stepped forward. It seemed theatrical, almost ridiculous in modern New York, but the silence in the room commanded respect. "Presenting the delegation of the Principality of Valoria," the herald announced. A phalanx of men in sharp dark suits entered first. They moved with military precision. Then came the advisors, carrying briefcases handcuffed to their wrists. And finally, the Grand Duke. Bridger squinted. He remembered the man he had met 4 years ago in the garden of that small cottage in Valoria. He remembered a man in muddy, oversized overalls, a sun hat, and hands stained with soil. He remembered thinking the man was simple, perhaps a little slow, obsessing over his hydrangeas. The man walking into the ballroom was not simple. Grand Duke Henri was tall, with silver hair swept back from a forehead that looked like it was carved from granite. He wore a tuxedo that fit so perfectly it seemed woven onto his skin, and across his chest hung a sash of royal purple with a single, massive star-shaped medal. His eyes, cold and grey, scanned the room with the terrifying intelligence of a predator assessing a herd. "That's him?" Sasha whispered, unimpressed. He looks like a grandfather clock. Shh, Bridger hissed. Arthur Pendleton nudged Bridger. Go on. Work your magic. Tcha, Bridger hissed. Arthur Pendleton nudged Bridger. Go on. Work your magic. Bridger straightened his spine, plastered on his best smile, and stepped forward, dragging Sasha with him. He approached the center of the room where the Grand Duke had stopped. Your Royal Highness, Bridger said, his voice projecting confidence. Welcome to New York. It is an honor to host you. Grand Duke Henri turned slowly. His gaze landed on Bridger. There was no flicker of recognition, no warmth, just a blank, icy stare. I am Bridger Calloway, Bridger continued, faltering slightly under the gaze. We met years ago in Valoria. At the cottage, the Grand Duke remained silent for a long, agonizing moment. The entire room watched. I meet many people, the Grand Duke finally said. His voice was deep, accented, and dry as parchment. I remember those who have honor. I remember those who do not. Bridger's smile froze. A ripple of uneasy laughter went through the crowd. Of course, Bridger recovered quickly. I understand. It was a brief meeting. But I am the lead negotiator for Kensington and Wyatt. I look forward to finalizing our partnership tonight. The Grand Duke looked at Sasha. He looked at her sheer dress, her heavy makeup, the way she clung to Bridger's arm. Partnership, the Grand Duke repeated, tasting the word like it was sour wine. We shall see. My daughter, the Keeper of the Seal, will be conducting the final assessment. Your daughter? Bridger blinked. I wasn't aware the princess was involved in financial matters. I thought she... Well, I assumed she was more of a figurehead. You assume much, Mr. Calloway, the Grand Duke said. It is a dangerous habit. He turned his back on Bridger, effectively dismissing him, and began speaking to a rival banker from Goldman Sachs. Bridger stood there, stunned. His face burned. What a rude old man, Sasha hissed. Who does he think he is? Shut up, Bridger snapped, pulling her away. He's testing me, that's all. It's a power play. He wants to see if I crack. Well, don't crack, Arthur Pendleton whispered, appearing at Bridger's elbow. But I have to tell you, Calloway, he didn't look happy to see you. And who is this Keeper of the Seal? Our intel said the Duke makes all the decisions. I don't know, Bridger admitted, sweat prickling his hairline. But it doesn't matter. Once I get them in the boardroom, numbers will talk. Numbers will talk. But as Bridger looked across the room, watching the Grand Duke command the attention of billionaires and senators, a cold seed of dread began to form in his stomach. The man looked familiar, yes. But the way he held himself, it reminded Bridger of someone else, someone he had just kicked out of his apartment. No, Bridger thought, shaking his head. Impossible. Gracelyn is a mouse. This man is a lion. He downed his scotch in one gulp. He needed to focus. The presentation was in 1 hour. The transition from the cocktail hour to the formal presentation took place in the Oculus Room, a massive circular hall with a domed glass ceiling. A long oval table made of black marble dominated the center. Bridger sat on one side, flanked by Arthur Pendleton, Sasha, who insisted on sitting at the table as his assistant, and 3 junior lawyers. Opposite them sat the Valorian delegation. The Grand Duke sat in the center, his face unreadable, but a chair to his immediate right, the seat of honor, was empty. Gentlemen, Bridger began. Standing up and pressing a button to dim the lights, a holographic projection of charts and growth trajectories appeared in the air above the table. We are here to discuss the future. Kensington and Wyatt proposes a dynamic restructuring of the Valorian assets. We will aggressively diversify your portfolio into tech, aerospace, and high-risk derivatives. He spoke for 20 minutes. He was brilliant. He was charismatic. He used buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shift. He outlined a plan that would make the firm billions in fees. When he finished, he expected applause. or at least nodding. Instead, silence stretched across the table. Grand Duke Henri leaned forward. He didn't look at the hologram, he looked at Bridger. "Mr. Calloway," the Duke said, "your numbers are impressive, but in Valoria we do not trust numbers. We trust character. We trust loyalty. A man who cannot manage his own home cannot be trusted to manage a kingdom's treasury." Bridger froze. "I beg your pardon, you spoke of aggressive restructuring." The Duke continued. "Is that what you call it when you discard an asset you no longer find shiny? When you trade a long-term investment for a volatile short-term gain?" The Duke's eyes flickered to Sasha. Sasha shifted in her seat, suddenly self-conscious. I don't think personal matters are relevant here," Bridger stammered. "My private life is separate from my professional competence." "In my family," the Duke said, his voice rising, "the personal and the professional are one. We do not hide behind corporate veils." He gestured to the empty chair beside him. "You asked about the keeper of the seal. The one who has the final veto on this deal. The one who has the final veto on this deal. The one who actually owns the majority voting rights of our sovereign fund." "Yes," Bridger said, his throat dry. "Is the Princess joining us?" "She is," the Duke said. "She was delayed. She had to move out of her apartment on short notice." The blood drained from Bridger's face so fast it left him dizzy. The room seemed to tilt. She had to move out of her apartment on short notice. The double doors at the end of the Oculus room opened. The sound of heels creaking against the marble floor echoed like hammer strikes. A woman walked in. She was not wearing a beige trench coat. She was not wearing a sensible navy dress. She was wearing a gown of deep emerald green velvet that hugged her curves and trailed behind her like a royal train. The neckline was regal off the shoulder, revealing skin that glowed under the lights. Her honey blonde hair was no longer pulled back in a messy bun. It cascaded in meticulously styled waves around her shoulders. And on her head, resting lightly but with undeniable weight, was a tiara, not a plastic toy, but a band of platinum set with diamonds and emeralds that caught the light and threw it back with blinding intensity. Bridger's mouth fell open. Sasha audibly gasped. Arthur Pendleton dropped his pen. It was Gracelyn. But it wasn't the Gracelyn Bridger knew. This woman walked with a terrifying grace. She didn't look at the floor. She looked straight ahead, her eyes locked on Bridger's. She reached the table. A Valorian guard pulled out the empty chair. She sat down, her movements fluid and precise. "I apologize for the delay, Papa," Gracelyn said, her voice clear and resonant. She turned to the gaping men across the table. "Gentlemen, thank you for waiting." "Gracelyn," Bridger whispered, his voice cracking. "What? What is this? Is this a joke?" "Mr. Calloway," Gracelyn said coolly. "Mr. Calloway," Gracelyn said coolly, "please address me by my proper title in this setting. I'm Princess Gracelyn Valois of Valoria, Duchess of Brabant, and chairwoman of the Valorian Sovereign Trust." "Princess," Sasha shrieked. "You? But you cook pot roast. You dig in the dirt." Gracelyn turned her gaze to Sasha. It was a look of such profound pity that it silenced the mistress instantly. "I cook because I enjoy nurturing," Gracelyn said. "I garden because I appreciate growth. These are concepts you might struggle to understand, Miss Montgomery. As for my title, I chose to live simply in New York. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for what I owned. I wanted to see if a man could love Gracelyn the woman, not Gracelyn the princess." She turned back to Bridger. Her eyes hardened. "I got my answer 3 days ago. When you threw my divorce papers on the table." Bridger stood up, his hands shaking. Gracelyn, wait. You have to understand. I didn't know. If I had known. If you had known I was royalty, you would have stayed." Gracelyn finished for him. "That is exactly the point, Bridger. You failed the test. You treated your wife like a burden because you thought she had no power. You belittled me. You cheated on me. You cast me aside for a shinier toy. She picked up the leather-bound proposal Bridger had prepared. She didn't open it. She simply dropped it into the waste bin beside her chair. "The deal is dead," she announced. "Now wait a minute." Arthur Pendleton shouted, standing up. "You can't do this. We have a contract. We have preliminary agreements." "Signed by who?" Grasselin asked calmly. "My father. He has the power to negotiate, but I hold the seal. Without my signature, Valoria does not spend a single cent." She looked at Bridger. "You wanted to manage a kingdom's wealth, Bridger. You couldn't even manage your own integrity. You called my father a useless old man. You called me a nobody. Well, this nobody just cancelled your $40 billion merger." "Gracelyn, please," Bridger begged, sweating profusely now. "We can talk about this. The divorce papers. I haven't filed them yet. We're still married. Technically, I'm the Prince Consort." The Grand Duke let out a short, sharp laugh. "Oh no," Gracelyn smiled. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You signed the papers, Bridger. You were very insistent. 48 hours to pack, you said. You wanted me gone. I am simply complying with your wishes." She signaled to the guards. "This meeting is adjourned. Mr. Calloway, I believe security will escort you out. You are trespassing on a private diplomatic function." "You can't do this to me," Bridger screamed, his composure shattering. "I made you. I took you in when you were nothing." "You took nothing in," Gracelyn corrected, "and you lost everything." Two massive security guards stepped forward, grabbing Bridger by the arms. "Get your hands off me!" Bridger yelled, thrashing as they dragged him away from the table. Sasha scrambled to follow him, her high heels slipping on the marble, clutching her purse, looking like a terrified child. As the doors slammed shut on Bridger's screaming figure, the room fell silent. Arthur Pendleton looked at Gracelyn. He looked at the waste bin, where his billions had just been discarded. He looked at the empty chair where his star negotiator had sat. He slowly began to pack his briefcase. He knew with sinking certainty that Bridger Calloway wasn't just fired. He was destroyed. Gracelyn let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly. She looked at her father. "That was harder than I thought," she admitted softly. "The hardest steel is forged in the hottest fire," the Grand Duke said, placing a hand on hers. "Now, the real work begins. We must find a partner who deserves us." But for Bridger, the nightmare was just starting. Because as he was thrown out onto the wet pavement of Fifth Avenue, he realized that his phone was buzzing. It was a notification from the company server, account access, denied, email access, denied, and then a text from Arthur Pendleton. "Don't bother coming in Monday. And get a lawyer. A good one." The rain had returned to Manhattan, a gray, relentless drizzle that seemed to wash away the glamour of the city, leaving only grit. Bridger Calloway stood on the sidewalk outside his apartment building, the same building he had walked into like a god just 3 days ago. He was soaked, but not because he had forgotten an umbrella. He was soaked because the doorman, a man named Henry whom Bridger had never bothered to tip in 4 years, refused to let him stand under the awning. "I live here," Bridger shouted, slamming his hand against the glass door. "Open the damn door, Henry." Henry looked through the glass, his face impassive. He pressed the intercom button. "Mr. Pendleton called. Mr. Calloway. The apartment is company property. Since your employment was terminated for gross negligence and reputational damage, your tenancy is void effective immediately. Your personal effects have been boxed and left at the service entrance around the back." "Service entrance?" Bridger sputtered, his face turning red. "My suits are in there! My watch collection! You can't do this!" "It's already done, sir. Please move along, or I'll have to call the police." Bridger kicked the door, hurting his toe, and stormed around to the alley. There, sitting in the mud next to a dumpster, were 4 cardboard boxes. They were wet. He ripped open the top box. His Bryony suits were jammed inside, wrinkled and possibly ruined. His watch case was missing. "Sasha," he muttered. "Sasha must have taken the watches." He pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking. He dialed Sasha's number. It went straight to voicemail. He dialed again. And again, finally, on the 5th try, she answered, "Bridger, stop calling." Her voice was clipped icy. "Sasha, where are you?" "They locked me out. They fired me, Sasha. Can you believe it?" Arthur turned on me. "I need you to book us a room at the St. Regis. I need to regroup. I'm going to sue them for wrongful termination." There was a pause on the line. Then a sigh. "I'm not booking you a room, Bridger." "What? Why? Look, I know it's a setback, but I'm still me. I'm still the best deal maker in the city. We can." "You're radioactive, Ben." Sasha cut him off. Her voice wasn't cruel, just matter-of-fact, which hurt worse. "I was at the gala. I saw what happened. You didn't just lose a deal. You insulted a foreign head of state. You're blacklisted. No firm in New York, London, or Tokyo will touch you. So, we have each other," Bridger cried, sounding desperate even to his own ears. "You said you loved my ambition." "I loved your trajectory," Sasha corrected. "I loved where you were going. But now, you're going nowhere. And I have my own career to think about. If I'm seen with you, I go down too." "You mercenary witch," Bridger hissed. "After everything I bought you? The jewelry, the trips, consider it payment for services rendered," Sasha said. "Oh, and by the way, I'm seeing someone else for dinner tonight. Someone who knows how to treat a princess, or at least, knows how to recognize one." "Who?" Bridger demanded. "Who is it?" "Arthur Pendleton," Sasha said. "He needs a new VP of marketing. And a date for the opera. Goodbye, Bridger." The line went dead. Bridger stared at the phone. He felt a scream building in his chest, a primal roar of frustration. But when he opened his mouth, only a dry sob came out. He sat down on the wet cardboard box containing his ruined suits. He had no home. He had no job. He had no mistress. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He had $300 in cash and a platinum credit card. He tried to check his bank balance on his app. Account frozen, pending legal review. The firm had frozen his bonuses. They were clawing back everything. Bridger Calloway, the master of the universe, was homeless. He dragged his boxes to the nearest subway station, the wheels of his life coming off one by one. He checked into a grimy motel in Queens, the very place he had mocked Graceland about just days earlier. The room smelled of stale smoke and regret. He sat on the lumpy mattress, staring at the peeling wallpaper. "Graceland," he whispered, anger replacing the shock. "This is her fault. She set me up. She lied to me for 4 years. That's fraud. That has to be fraud." His eyes narrowed. A plan began to form. He wasn't done yet. He was Bridger Calloway. He would fight dirty. 2 weeks later, Bridger walked into the office of Slater Associates, a law firm located in a strip mall in New Jersey. It was a far cry from the glass towers of Manhattan, but no reputable lawyer in the city would take his calls. Marty Slater, a man with a comb-over and a ketchup stain on his tie, looked over the documents Bridger had brought. "So, let me get this straight," Marty said, chewing on a pen cap. "You want to sue your ex-wife for what exactly?" "Emotional distress. Fraud. She lied about her identity." Bridger slammed his hand on the cheap laminate desk. "She pretended to be poor. I married a graphic designer, not a duchess worth billions. That's material misrepresentation. I want half. No, I want spousal support appropriate to her income level. I want alimony based on the Valorian treasury." Marty whistled. "That's a big swing, Mr. Calloway. But if she deceived you, we might have a case. Did you sign a prenup?" "No," Bridger scoffed. "She had nothing when we met. I didn't think I needed one." "Okay, good. No prenup. Now what about the divorce settlement? You said you signed papers?" "Yes." Bridger waved his hand dismissively. "I had my corporate lawyers draft them. Standard separation. I gave her a lump sum of $50,000 to get rid of her. She signed it. Can I see the papers? Bridger pulled the crumpled copy from his briefcase. He had carried it with him like a holy text. Marty put on his reading glasses and scanned the document. He read the first page. He flipped to the second. He paused on the third page. He frowned, then he started to chuckle. What? Bridger asked, irritated. What's funny? Mr. Calloway, you said you used your corporate lawyers for this? The sharks at Kensington and Wyatt? The best in the business. Well, Marty said, tossing the papers back onto the desk. They certainly are sharks. They wrote an airtight contract. The problem is, they wrote it to protect you from her. Exactly. No, you don't understand. Marty leaned forward. Look at Clause 14, Section B, the total severance and waiver of future discovery clause. Bridger squinted at the tiny text. Both parties agree that the division of assets listed herein is final and absolute. Both parties hereby waive any right to future claims on assets, income, or inheritances, known or unknown, disclosed or undisclosed, possessed by the other party. This waiver is irrevocable and survives any discovery of hidden wealth. Bridger felt the blood drain from his face. I had them put that in, he whispered, his voice trembling. I had them put that in because I thought she might try to come after my future bonuses. I wanted to make sure she couldn't claim a penny of my success if I became a billionaire later. Irony is a cruel mistress. Marty shook his head. You built a wall to keep her out of your money. But you ended up locking yourself out of hers. You waived your right to her fortune, Mr. Calloway, even if she owns half of Europe. You signed a paper saying you don't care. There has to be a loophole. Bridger shouted, standing up. She tricked me. She didn't trick you, Marty shrugged. She signed the paper you gave her. In a court of law, that's called a bad business decision. You played yourself. Bridger stumbled out of the office, dazed. The harsh sunlight of the New Jersey parking lot hurt his eyes. He walked to a nearby electronics store, where a wall of televisions was playing the midday news. He stopped, transfixed. On the center screen, there she was. Gracelyn. She was standing on a balcony of a palace in Valoria, overlooking a sea of cheering people. She wore a simple, elegant white dress, no diamonds, no flash. Next to her stood her father, the Grand Duke. The headline on the news ticker read, Princess Gracelyn announces initerative 4 or 9 tegrity. The news anchor's voice floated out of the speakers. In a stunning move, Princess Gracelyn of Valoria has announced a new global grant for ethical business practices. The grant, worth $40 billion funds previously earmarked for a merger with American firm Kensington and Wyatt, will now go to support small businesses owned by women and minorities. In her speech, the princess stated, true wealth is not found in the accumulation of assets, but in the strength of one's character. The camera zoomed in on Gracelyn's face. She looked radiant, happy, free. A reporter in the crowd shouted a question. Your Highness, what about your time in New York? Do you have any regrets about your marriage to financier Bridger Calloway? Bridger pressed his face against the glass of the shop window, holding his breath. Gracelyn smiled, a small, mysterious smile. I have no regrets, she said into the microphone. My time in New York taught me a valuable lesson. It taught me the difference between a man who knows the price of everything and a man who knows the value of nothing. I am grateful for the clarity. She turned and walked back into the palace. Bridger stared at the black screen as the broadcast cut to a commercial. He looked at his reflection in the shop window. His suit was stained. His hair was messy. His eyes were wild. He looked like the nobody he had always feared becoming. He had held a diamond in his hand and thrown it away because he thought it was glass. His phone buzzed. It was a notification from his bank. Automatic payment failed. Motel 6. Insufficient funds. He had hit rock bottom. But the universe, it seemed, had one final twist in store for him. As he turned away from the window, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. It wasn't Sasha. It wasn't Arthur. It was a man Bridger recognized from the photographs in the society pages. It was Julian Vane, a notorious corporate raider, a man known for buying distressed assets and stripping them for parts, a man far more ruthless than Bridger had ever been. "Calloway?" Vane asked, looking Bridger up and down with amusement. "Yes." Bridger straightened up, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. Was this it? A second chance? A job offer? "I heard you're the man who blew the Valorian deal," Vane said smoothly. I have inside information," Bridger said quickly, stepping closer to the car. "I know how they think. I know the princess's weaknesses. I can help you." Vane laughed, a cold, metallic sound. "Help me? No, Bridger, I don't hire failures. But I do collect interesting stories." Vane reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin. A single silver quarter. He flicked it into the air. It landed in the puddle at Bridger's feet with a splash. "Call your mother, Calloway. Tell her you're coming home. The city is done with you." The window rolled up, and the car sped away, splashing dirty water onto Bridger's trousers. Bridger stood alone in the parking lot. He looked down at the quarter in the mud. He bent down. He hesitated. And then Bridger Calloway, the man who used to drink $5,000 champagne, reached into the mud and picked up the quarter. 12 months had passed since the rain-soaked night at the Cypher Club. New York City was once again in the grip of winter. The streets dusted with snow that quickly turned to gray slush under the tires of limousines. Inside the Astoria Grand Ballroom, the annual Titans of Industry gala was in full swing. It was the same crowd, the same music, the same smell of expensive perfume and ambition. But Bridger Calloway was not wearing a bespoke Brioni suit. He was not swirling a glass of 1959 Dom Perignon. He was not the man of the hour. He was wearing a polyester vest that was a size too tight around the neck. He was holding a silver tray heavy with empty champagne flutes. His feet ached in cheap, rubber-soled shoes. "Waiter," a voice barked from a nearby table. "More wine." "This glass has been empty for 3 minutes," Bridger froze. He knew that voice. He kept his head down, his eyes fixed on the tablecloth, and moved toward table 9. He reached for the wine bottle with a trembling hand. Sitting at the table was Arthur Pendleton. He looked older, redder in the face, looking stressed. Next to him sat Sasha. Sasha looked perfect, polished, and utterly miserable. She wore a diamond necklace that looked heavy enough to choke her. She was checking her phone under the table, ignoring Arthur as he ranted about quarterly projections. "Pour it, man. Don't just stand there," Arthur snapped, not even looking at Bridger's face. To Arthur, the waiter was just a pair of hands, a utility, a nobody. Bridger poured the wine. A drop spilled onto the white tablecloth. "Idiot," Arthur hissed. "Can't you do anything, right? Go get a napkin." Bridger felt a hot flush of shame burn his cheeks. It was the same shame he had tried to inflict on Gracelyn a year ago. "You're a stain," he had told her. "You're clumsy." As he dabbed the stain, Sasha looked up. Her eyes met Bridger's. For a second there was no recognition. Then her eyes widened. Her mouth opened slightly. She took in the cheap vest, the tired eyes, the thinning hair. Bridger pleaded with his eyes. "Don't say anything, please." Sasha looked at him, then looked at Arthur, who was busy chewing on a roll. A strange look crossed her face. Was it pity? Was it mockery? No. It was envy. "Arthur," Sasha said, her voice flat. "Let's go. This party is boring." "We can't go," Arthur grunted. "They're about to announce the International Philanthropist of the Year. We need to be seen clapping." The lights in the ballroom dimmed. A massive screen descended from the ceiling. "Ladies and gentlemen," The announcer's voice boomed. Tonight, we honor a leader who has redefined global charity. A woman who took a family legacy and turned it into a force for justice. Please turn your attention to the screen for a live feed from Valoria. The screen flickered to life. The image was breathtaking. It was a garden lush, green, vibrant. It was bursting with hydrangeas, roses, and ivy. In the center of the garden sat Gracelyn. She was not wearing a tiara. She was wearing a simple linen dress, her hands resting on her lap. She looked younger than she had in years. The shadows under her eyes were gone. She looked peaceful. Next to her sat a handsome manor-duke from a neighboring province, rumored to be her new fiancé. He was looking at her the way Bridger used to look at the stock market, with absolute adoration. Thank you, New York. Gracelyn's voice filled the ballroom, warm and clear. I accept this award on behalf of the Initiative for Integrity. This year we have funded over 5,000 small businesses. We have proven that you do not need to step on others to rise. You only need to lift them up. In the ballroom, hundreds of people applauded. Arthur Pendleton clapped politely. She's something, isn't she? Arthur muttered to Sasha. I should have tried to merge with her firm when I had the chance. Calloway was a fool to let that fish go. Yes, Sasha whispered, staring at the screen, at the genuine smile on Gracelyn's face, a smile Sasha knew she would never have. He was a fool. On the screen, the interviewer asked Gracelyn one final question. Your Highness, you seem so happy. What is the secret to your transformation? Gracelyn looked into the camera. For a moment, it felt like she was looking directly into the dark corner where Bridger stood, holding a tray of dirty glasses. I stopped trying to impress people who didn't matter, Gracelyn said softly. And I started valuing the people who did. I learned that a castle built on lies is just a prison. But a cottage built on truth, that is a kingdom. The screen faded to black. The lights came up. The applause was thunderous. Bridger Calloway stood in the shadows. A single tear rolled down his cheek, mixing with the sweat of a 12-hour shift. Waiter! Arthur yelled again, waving his empty glass. Refill, now! Bridger wiped his face with his sleeve. He straightened his back just a little. Yes, sir, Bridger whispered. He stepped forward to serve the man who had taken his job, the woman who had taken his dignity, and the society that had forgotten his name. He was exactly where he belonged. And that is the tragic, yet satisfying end of Bridger Calloway. He spent his life chasing gold, only to realize too late that he held the real treasure in his hands and threw it away. He ended up serving the very people he tried so hard to impress, while Gracelyn found her happiness by simply being herself. It's a brutal reminder, be careful who you belittle on your way up, because you might just meet them on your way down, or worse, you might end up serving them. What do you think? Did Bridger deserve his fate, or was a lifetime of servitude too harsh? And what about Sasha? Did you catch that look of envy at the end? If you enjoyed this story of karma and royal justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. I have a new drama coming next week about a billionaire who poses as a homeless man to find a wife, and you won't believe the twist. Thanks for watching. And remember, real power isn't about the crown you wear. It's about how you treat people when no one is watching. See you next time.